Weep. There we go. Give me a second. Give me a second. What are we doing? How's it going out there? Oh, I already have comments. Let me click on that. Tim and Andrea, I think, are in the next room. You know, when I started doing lives on Facebook, I had to get used to the fact that I have to pretend people are in the room. And once I got a hang of that I'm actually all by myself in my office. And Renew has started to meet. Renew is the new name of our youth group. And they've decided to start meeting on Wednesdays, which is tonight. So they're in the other building. And so any second now, they could run through this building and shake this room. So just be prepared. Ethan, how are you, sir? Devin, hi, baby. All right, let's see. There it is. All right. I got a little monitor over here. Sandy's watching, but won't. Oh, there she is. Hey, Bright. All right. Well, let's see. I just told Renew that they got a shout out. I can have everybody come up and just be in the shuttlecraft with me. Let's see. Hey, Lee. Well, let's see. I have some announcements. I can do that for a little bit. There it is. You've seen that one before. Prayer requests and or praises. If God is doing something, I would love to hear that. And that would be wonderful. Yankee Doodle Parade is this Saturday. If you signed up, if you haven't signed up, you should sign up. That's all there is to it. That's how easy that is. I'm going to be driving. Brian McGrath will be driving the water van, and I will be the passenger and do the wave, just like Skibo told us to do the Queen wave. Ladies' Night is coming up in October, probably about a month from Sunday. And Ladies' Night, I know there's plans going on. I have a group that are figuring out the guys' night, at least the fun part. And we got to figure out the food now that I think about it. All right, got a lot of plans going on. That's not everything that's going on in our church, but that's the things you need to be aware of for a little bit. And let's see. Sorry, I'm late. This came. Oh, Steve just ran over from Russ Greenwood, the pastor of Brookridge Community Church, who does his live at 7. So I usually watch that, and Steve was there. He must be out of breath running from live to live. They were pumped. I might come by. Let's see. Evan, that is a great question. I don't know. I looked out there. It's definitely not Earth unless Earth is on fire, which who knows? Hey, Don. Mr. Brown coming in from 4. Oh, on behalf of Bobby and Colleen, welcome, Browns. It's nice to see you. Russ was good tonight. Russ is doing his way through the book of James, which is, I think, arguably the most practical book. I mean, it just reaches out and slaps you, doesn't it? And if you've never read James, I suggest you read James. And so, to be fair, that's your fault. You make hanging out with Russ sound very exciting. Well, I got to admit, I signed into Russ's, and he said, hey, if you want to get a full hour, you go to Brian in Bay State's live tonight, and you get a full hour. And, so who knows? I know that his mom likes me. So, all right. I'm kind of putting it up. Oh, look at this, Russ now. See, I just gave you a shout out, Russ, because he shouts me out. And Steve was late to mine because he was at yours, not saying anything. You know how you guys are. And my mom's a big fan. I friend requested her the other day, so we're friends now on Facebook. So I'm going to send her a message and we'll talk about you. Hey, Johnny, I thought you were just going to be in the curtains here in the back. AJ's here as well. I like Nancy. I think she's cool. All right, guys, I've been stalling because we're in Zephaniah. And I keep telling you, well, the way my notes are split up, well, here's maybe an announcement. Next week, I'm out of town. So either I'm going to pre-record, or you guys can all go to Russ's and watch his. That would be cool. But don't forget Zephaniah. I actually have done all the notes for Haggai, and I am going to say Haggai because I don't like when people say Haggai, because that's actually not how that's pronounced. Haggai. Okay, but I've really enjoyed that. The Lord laid some stuff on my heart that I'm dying to go through that. But we have a couple of weeks left in Zephaniah, and when it comes to putting the notes together for Zephaniah, I keep telling you, look for the grace, look for the grace, look for the grace. And well, we're going to look at Zephaniah chapter 2, starting in verse 4, and then we're going to lean over and overlap into chapter 3 for 7 verses. And so I want to try to save us some time, because the first, right up until you get to chapter 3, there is no grace. There's none. We are looking at pure wrath, pure judgment. Now, if you want to split this book up into little pieces, Johnny, I gotta put this up. Johnny spelled my name wrong. Johnny, that could cause relationship rifts. I'm just telling you right now. I'm getting much better at that. Chapter 2, verse 4 to the end of the chapter 2. If you would have split this up like I have, chapter 1 was God judging Judah for her sins. And you know that Judah is going to end up in captivity in Babylon, because we know that because of the book of Daniel. All right. So they're going to spend 70 years there. Now, God's going to use that, correct them, but he's already, again, look for the grace. He's already promised after 70 years, I'll bring you back. I'll bring you back. And frankly, they owed him 7 years. I think it's the year of Jubilee, where they're supposed to let the land rest, and they didn't for 10 cycles. So they owed him 70 years. And so God's true to what God says. And so at any rate, verse 4 of chapter 2 to the end of chapter 2, the Lord is going to judge and describe the judgment of all the surrounding nations. Now you can look at this. There's some prophecy that is local. It's for Zephaniah's time, but it also kind of gives us a foreshadowing of what the Battle of Armageddon, frankly, will look like, when all of the nations will go up in the Valley of Megiddo against God's chosen people. That's why I've told you, if you read the book of Revelation, keep it in mind, it'll help you a lot, is after, I think it's chapter 4, once all the 7 churches are listed in their letters, and then he tells John, come up hither, I think is kind of a wording for the rapture, a picture for us. And then from that point on, you don't hear about the church. That God is not referred to as Father anymore. He's more referred to as Creator. And so we get back to Old Testament, and God's going to keep his promise to Israel. He didn't just cut them off, because God can't make a promise and then break a promise. He can't do it. It would be against his nature. And if it's against his nature, he'd cease to be who he is. And so when you get to Revelation, and I think it's chapter 4, it becomes a very Jewish book, and you have to look at it through that lens. And so the Battle of Armageddon, which happens towards the end of the book, just before chapter 19, I believe. Jesus comes back in chapter 19. Chapter 19, verse 11, one of my favorite passages. And he wipes out everybody. So we're going to look at it. Actually, I'm going to try to skip to chapter 3, because I'll give you some chance. He's just going to list. Zephaniah will name various Gentile nations from verse 4 to the end of the chapter, the nations that surround Judah, and announce that God will judge them for their sins as well. And when he judges them, let me bring up your Bible. I didn't do that for you. I just had let me cross that out. All right. So it just shows that he's going to take care of the nations. Judah got its own chapter, its own mention, because again, I think God is correcting his children, where he's judging the heathen nations, the ones who are outright rejecting him. Judah, they're his, but they're just not good at being his. And that is a problem. And so in chapter 1, he judges Judah. In chapter 2, he judges the surrounding nations. Again, a foreshadowing of what he's going to do in the end times. And so verses 4 to 7, you can read it. I'm going to bring you to chapter 3 real quick as soon as I can here. But in verse 4 to 7, he begins with Philistia, or the Philistines, and predicts that their coast will become like, that's where Judah someday will just bring their sheep to eat grass because that's how vacant that land will be. And so when God wipes out something or a nation, it is wiped out. I read a book years ago. I think it was Sodom and Gomorrah, and I think they supposedly have found it. I don't know about that. But one of the critics I read said, "Well, how do you the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, we've never actually found Sodom and Gomorrah because God destroyed it." I don't understand. What do you expect to find? Ashes? Anyway, I just think critics are funny. All right, so in verses 8 to 11, he lists Moab and Ammon. Both have come from the backslidden Lot lineage. You find that in Genesis chapter 19, verses 33 to 38. They mistreated God's people and proudly and arrogantly mistreated them. The word arrogance keeps rolling over in my mind because, again, whether saved or unsaved, I think we have a problem with arrogance in our day and age because we just think we're something, and I don't know if that's not a godly thing. That has nothing to do with humility at all. Anyway, but these nations were known for how arrogantly they mistreated God's people. Therefore, God's going to humble them. You're going to be arrogant? God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. Their land would be ruined and their idols would prove powerless. Well, no kidding. So that's verses 8 to 11. Moab, let's see. Destroy completely. Oh, there's Sodom and Gomorrah right there. And your land is going to become, this is just pretty much weeds, okay? Salt pits, eternal desolation. Well, what about all the pretty cities? Yeah, nothing. Now watch this. I think this is important. And see this word right here? It's going to appear a couple of times, and we're going to look at it probably next week. But there's a remnant. So you have God's people are Judah, but even within Judah, there are people that aren't really God's people because it's a heart thing. And so in verse 12, he goes to Egypt, you Ethiopians. You also be slaughtered by my sword, and that's really the only mention. I'm gonna go to war with you, and there's a good chance you're not gonna win. One verse. Then the Lord will strike the land of the north with his fist and destroying all the lands of Assyria. You might be familiar if you've been following on Wednesday nights. We've been going through the minor prophets. Assyria is just in history, not so much as biblically, but it is biblically. But in history, Assyria is known for just being so cruel. But the capital of Assyria was Nineveh. Nineveh has been, if you've been following us through Jonah and Nahum, and a couple others have mentioned Nineveh. Well, Nineveh is mentioned here. You will make its great capital, Nineveh, a desolate wasteland, parched like a desert. The proud city will become pasture for, again, there's not going to be even ruins. It's going to be plains. It's going to be grassy because there's going to be nothing left. When God destroys something, he destroys it. And so verses 13 to 15, Assyria, their capital Nineveh, will be completely destroyed, turned to wilderness. Wild beasts and birds will dwell there with animals. Their beautiful buildings will be buried under the sand. And Nahum also prophesied the fall of Nineveh, which we studied, and it complete destruction. All right. Now, I threw through that because I don't know about you, but my week has been weird. And I don't want to talk about the wrath of God. But I do know this. Write this down. When God judges something, it is judged. When he finally gets to that point in his patience, and his patience, I don't think is infinite, but it's better than mine. That's all I know, and I'm grateful for that. But the understanding is this. When he finally says, you know what, enough. When he says enough, that's when you need to run to the hills. I believe the book of Revelation mentions that. When you see these things happening, you run to the mountains like there's no tomorrow because your redemption draws near. All right, so where's the grace? Because that's all heavy if you read it, and I suggest you do. It's only a few verses. He goes into chapter 3, and he says, you know what? With all this in mind, the heaviness of God's wrath, the heaviness of the judgment of God, of all these people who have bothered and just been cruel and just not what he intended, the prophet Zephaniah turns, and we have labeled it chapter 3, and he says in the first 7 verses, he turns back to his people. Now remember, he's already talked about Judah. This is the judgment falling on Judah. This is the judgment on all the rest get bad. Remember, Judah, you're going to go into captivity, but in 70 years you'll come back, and I'm going to restore you. Matter of fact, that's what chapter 3 is mostly about. I'm going to restore you. But right now, you kind of have to go to your room. That's what's going on here. This is a father dealing with his children, where this chapter 2 was, you guys, enough. And I can't help but wonder, in a world in which we live today, why doesn't God just say, you know what, enough. And every time I think it can't get much worse, it gets weirder. It gets so strange. And I know, and I'm living in a world right now. I'm at the season of life where I swear even Christians that I know just kind of look at me and go, yeah, you're just old. No, I promise you, it is not compared to the world in which I grew up. And I'm going to say this: it's not better. It's not better. It didn't change for the better. So at any rate, verse 1 of chapter 3 says he turns to his Judah again, his people. Zephaniah does, because I think it's weighing so heavy. When God judges them, it's final. And he's moved in his heart to his own people again, and he gives them some advice. And he says, watch out for these things. What sorrow awaits rebellious, polluted Jerusalem? We know Jerusalem's not in good state, because any second now the Babylonians will be coming in. Matter of fact, that's how my notes end tonight. What sorrow awaits rebellious, polluted Jerusalem, the city of violence and crime? Well, all right, so things that you're going to look out for, because, again, it is a dangerous thing to fall in the hands of a living God. And so understand this, the gravity of it. We don't like to talk, well, if he's a loving God. Hey, sometimes you just got to cut and run. And so the city of violence and crime, no one can tell it anything. It refuses correction. All right. It does not trust in the Lord or draw near to its God. Now, remember this. Zephaniah is the grandson of Hezekiah, one of the noted kings of Judah. But he's prophesying at a time where Josiah, remember the 8-year-old king? By the time he's 16, he's found the scriptures. He's found the Old Testament, because he's kind of reinstituting the temple, and he brought back Passover, and he's going to, I think Josiah is the one who said he followed in the footsteps of his father David. And so he wanted to reestablish godly relationship in his nation. Well, you can't make that like a proclamation as a king that, all right, everybody's a Christian now. But he did get rid of all the idols, but yet God looks at the heart, and these people's heart, even though they didn't have idols anymore, they weren't following. Did you see it? We're talking about Jerusalem. No one that can tell them anything. It refuses all correction. Tell me this isn't practical in the world we live in. Do you know a nation that is rebellious, full of violence and crime? Can you think of one nation? Maybe. I don't know. No one can tell it anything. And it refuses all correction. I was listening to a podcast today about how the word tolerance isn't even used anymore. You need to be tolerant. No, they've decided that what I believe is just evil, and evil shouldn't be tolerated. How convenient of a definition is that? They can't tell you why I'm evil, because, that whole loving your neighbor and stuff, they can't figure that out. But I'm just evil, what I believe. So if I'm evil, I shouldn't be tolerated. Isn't that convenient? No one can tell them anything. They refuse all correction. Jerusalem does not trust in the Lord or draw near to its God. The people who are the chosen people of God. They don't trust God, they don't trust him, and they don't draw near to him. Its leaders are like roaring. Now, all right, now we're going to get specific. You look at a nation and see what we have in common. And he's pretty much begging them, because their heart is broken. His heart is broken because he sees, oh, Stephen's here in my shuttlecraft. He just beamed aboard. Oh, you got to lean in. Oh, there he is.
So guys, I'm just going to plug my laptop in and then go to the gym.
Oh, he's just stealing our electricity. He better be tithing. Anyway, so, all right, so look at the list in verses 1 to 7 here in chapter 3. All right, we've already looked, and I'm just showing you how practical this is. And now he breaks it down into individuals, not by name, but it says in the leaders, this would be the princes and the judges, are like roaring lions hunting for victims. They're not out to help anybody. They're not to help the nation. They're out for themselves and looking for people to devour. All right. Its judges, there's the judges, are like ravenous wolves at evening time, who by dawn have no trace of their prey. So they gobble everything up. And then he moves on to prophets. Now, these are the guys who we depend on to hear from God. Its prophets are, ready? Do you know of a country like this? Its prophets are arrogant liars, seeking their own gain. Its priests, again, people we go to that are the go-between me and God, and I'm really hoping we can trust them. He says, listen, the priests defiled the temple by disobeying God's instructions. Do you know of a country that some of the steeples and some of the churches, they disobey God's instructions? Can you possibly think of a scenario like that? Verse 5, but the Lord is still there in the city. Son of a gun. There's still opportunity for grace. Again, he looked at all these nations being wiped out by the Lord, and it moved him to take one more shot at Judah and say, hey, listen, I'm going to spell it out. I'm going to be clear. This is going to happen, and this is why. Change it. Change it. And so, but the Lord is still there in the city, and he does no wrong. He's not doing anything wrong. Day by day, he hands down justice. Be careful when you pray for justice. And he does not fail, but the wicked know no shame. We don't even have the decency to be embarrassed by some of the things that we do as a nation. Verse 6, I have wiped out many nations. Notice the quote. I have wiped out many nations, devastating their fortresses, walls, and towers. Their streets are now deserted, and their cities lie in silent ruin. There are no survivors, none at all. I thought, now check it, this is quoting God again. I thought, surely they will have reverence for me now, because they're going to see what I can do and how I can do it. Remember, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and the beginning of knowledge. He said, surely they will have reverence for me now. Surely they will listen to my warning in turn. I added that. Sorry. But that's what he said. Listen, surely after I explain to them what I'm going to do to the enemies and the nations, sure they'll have reverence for me now. And we go, yeah, not so much. Surely they will listen to my warnings. I think we listen less and less. I got to be honest. And then I won't need to strike again. I won't need to. If you kind of turn to me with reverence, that would be that holy fear that the Bible talks about. Reverence. How about just respect? We don't respect God for who he is. If we respected God for who he is, our relationship with him wouldn't be narrowed down to Christmas and Easter. It just wouldn't be. And so they don't need to strike again, destroying their homes. But no, check this out. This is so sad, this indictment at the end. But no, they get up early to continue doing evil. When is enough enough? When will Christians and when will God's people just kind of turn and say, hey, you know what? This is what he said to do, so that's what I'm going to do. I remember years ago, I think I've told this story before, and a girl came into my office, it was years ago. She got saved in our church, and she was reading her Bible. Well, that's good right off the bat. And she came across passages on baptism. And then she met me on Sunday and said, can I talk to you for a second? She said, the Bible says I need to get baptized, so I'd like to get baptized. I said, no, you got that all wrong. I'm supposed to pressure you for 6 months to 12 months, and then you agree to get baptized, because that's how we do it. And no, she just said, hey, the Bible says I need to, so can we? Yeah. So refreshing. But no, they get up early. He said, surely, if God says, I did all this, and I can't imagine any other response than reverence and listening to me. But you still didn't. Because that's how arrogant we are. There's that word again. All right, so let me go through this. I got 5 minutes just to run through this, make sure I hit everything. Zephaniah closes his message with an appeal to his own people. If God judges the sins of the heathen nations, how much more will he judge the sins of Judah, his holy nation? He calls Jerusalem filthy and polluted in verse 1. Yet again, Josiah has removed all the idols, but God could see their hearts, and in their hearts he saw rebellion. They had no real faith in the Lord. Then he breaks it up into certain groups of people, the leaders, princes, and judges. He says, we're like growling animals seeking someone to devour. Do you know of a country like that? The prophets, who again, I want to hear from God, and that's who you went to in this day, they were light. They lacked seriousness of thought or concern. They were so busy enjoying the office of prophet, they weren't actually being prophets. And then the group was priests. Oh, they were also treacherous, was the word, because they led people astray. And then the group, the last group mentioned were the priests polluted whatever they touched, including the holy sanctuary. Now that, yeah, the priests were down here. He says, you polluted everything they touched. That's tough. I can tell you this. I'm a pastor. I'm not a priest, but I am in charge. I'm sorry. I just am. And if you don't like that, by all means, find a church where you can be in charge. And it's not all you think it is. But I'm going to have to give an answer not only for me someday, but I'm going to have to give an answer for Bay State. And these priests will stand before, and I know other guys in the ministry, that we will stand before God and give an account for what we've done, where we've led. And that, to me, is a weighty thing. And so for these guys, they polluted whatever they touched, including the holy sanctuary. They could see God's judgment day after day, but they did not take it to heart. They saw him punish other nations, but they said, that'll never happen here. Oh, no. Again, I've mentioned it over and over again. Do not be the person who confuses God's silence with his absence. He's not absent. He's just quiet and waiting for a response. The last thing he said from Calvary's Hill was, I love you so much, I can't stand it. And now he's waiting for the proper response, I love you too. All right. They could see God's judgment day after day, but they didn't take it to heart. They could see these things happen to the nations around them, and they went, yeah, but that's not us. It's kind of like when I watch the news and I watch all the flooding and everything that's going on around. Well, it's not us. And then that day it is you, and you wonder if someone's sitting at home on their lazy boy watching, go, that's not me. They saw him punish others, but they said it'll never happen here. Well, it did happen. Judah goes into captivity in 606 BC, again, historically and biblically, and the Babylonians came and destroyed the nation, the city, and the temple, all because, again, Zephaniah and a couple of the other prophets, if you've been following with us, have gone to Judah and said, he keeps giving you a chance. He keeps telling you what he's going to have to do in punishment and correction, and you don't want to. You just need to turn from these things. If you're a prophet, stop being an arrogant liar. This is not rocket science. If you're the priest in Judah, stop disobeying God's instructions and start obeying. That's what Christians used to be known to do. But you know what? I know this. That's why I pointed out the word arrogant. It's been my observation that when someone likes to disobey what God says, and they're kind of, especially in front of the pastor, they like to be arrogant about it. Like, well, because they're confusing God's silence with his absence. He's not absent. He's not absent. All right, so so they get brought into captivity in 606 BC. The Babylonians, that's where Daniel is. He writes the book of Daniel, and then 70 years they will be restored, which is the rest of this chapter, which we'll cover hopefully next week. Proverbs 14:34 said this: godliness makes a nation great, but sin is a disgrace to any people, especially the people of God. And if you know your New Testament, it also has a verse that says, and judgment starts in the house of God. All right. Now, with that being said, I thought of our nation as I read through some of this personally. Do we have any violence and crime? I think we might. Do we refuse correction and no one can tell us anything? I think that's true. Do we trust the Lord and do we draw near to him? I don't think so. Leaders are like roaring lions and just looking for victims? I think we check. Judges are ravenous wolves at evening time who drop but no left trace of their prey. They devour everything. Check. Are the professionals arrogant liars seeking their own gain? Check. If priests defile the temple by destroying and disobeying God's instruction? Check. But it's still there, and he still gives us a chance to change and turn. I've wiped out many nations. You've seen me do it. Surely you'll have reverence now. God's using logic here. If you're looking around, see what I do. You don't want to be under that part of me. You want to be under the grace part. He said, surely they'll listen to me now. I said, no, they'll get up early. I love this. Not only are they doing evil deeds, they get up early to do them. I got a lot of evil to do tomorrow. I got to get up at the crack of dawn. Lord help us. Good night, Lord help us. All right. That is it. I got to stop there. And I promise the rest of the chapter gets better because he talks about restoring Judah. All right. Let me see where we left off because it's 8:01. Oh, my friend Russ is here. Steve. Oh, yes, Steve. I don't usually have visitors here on the shuttle. Oh, classy. I don't know what I did, but I'll take it. That's a Brianism. He better be tithing. Oh, Kristen says hello to Sandy. That's nice. Cody and Stephen Lucas have been working out together. Is Cody ripped now? That's what we need. We need a whole church of ripped young men to, I don't know, to make me look bad. All right. Hey. It's one of my favorite spicers. It better be me, Scott. Sandy acknowledges. Pastor Brian and I have been working out together at Starbucks on Tuesday. Russ, I was listening to your James presentation, how we shouldn't make plans. My first thought was, should I not make plans to be there Tuesday? Or should I say, get in my car and say, if it's God's will, and head to Starbucks? So I have a lot of questions, but I want you to know I was listening. Micah's here? Son of a gun. Hi, Micah. Why are you hiding? That's the kind of workout, lifting those cups of coffee and putting them down again. That's right. Sometimes I switch hands. Oh, let's see. Off to get the babies to bed. Good night. Good night, Dev. Oh, Talon and I have been sick all week. No way. Please pray for our wellness by Saturday. Thank you, Pastor. Will do. I hope you're feeling better. Oh, that's awful. Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate you coming by. It's good to see you. Let's see. Cody is more sore than ripped at this point. That's a good sore, especially if you were his age. It's not so much a good sore at my age. Oh, well, there it is. It took till the end of my list here, but I finally got a Kristen high. Fine. Well, Sandy rates. The nicer spicer, as they say. All right. I thought you were out of state. I think, Russ, I will have to check my itinerary, but I think we leave later in the evening on Tuesday. So unless, of course, you've already scheduled golfing somewhere. Hey, Steve and Pastor, see you in Missouri. Oh, my goodness. Oh, Mike, I'm sorry, I can't make it. Yeah. All right, anyway. Oh, Brian, I've had kind of a weird week. I feel that. Thank you, brother. I knew you might. Good night. Good night, Shannon. And Ethan will be here Sunday. Sweet. All right, guys, it is 8:04. I do appreciate you signing in. And I know this was a little heavy and I was fast, but I appreciate you coming in. I hope it's a blessing to you. And I will talk to you Sunday.